All right, so now that we've gone over some of the technical gear and how to work our cameras properly, let's talk about the first step in the process of finding a composition, and that is warming up. If you remember back to my video about the 4 tenets of my philosophy in adventure photography, the 4th tenet is to achieve the flow state. And the flow state is essentially a state of mind that you can get yourself in where your creative juices are flowing, you got massive inspiration, and you're just taking photos without even consciously realizing it. It's just being completely in the zone. So this warming up video, I'm gonna show you a bunch of techniques that I use in order to get into this flow state of mind. Let's start with talking about what to do before you go shooting. So in preparation. So when you show up to a photo shoot, you're completely ready to go. The first thing I do is make sure my memory cards are completely clean. I like starting with a fresh plate, so I make sure everything's offloaded from previous shoots and they are fresh and ready to go. The second thing I do is I research the place that I'm going. And this is so there's no surprises when you show up. A lot of times, if you don't research it, you'll show up and realize there's no parking, or that you're signed up for a 5-mile hike when you thought you were just about to get off and walk up to an overlook. So get in the mindset of knowing where you're gonna go and what you're showing up to. Another great thing to do is to look at some sample photos of the area, just so you can start brainstorming what kind of compositions are gonna be there, what kind of settings you might be using, and what type of gear is gonna be applicable. So for example, if you know there's gonna be waterfalls or running water, making sure you have an ND filter is a good idea. Also, if you plan on doing really close-up shots of the ground, maybe you're gonna bring your small flexible tripod. Or if you're bringing a big camera bag, how many lenses are you planning on bringing? Do you wanna shoot long-range stuff? Are there supposed to be a bunch of birds there? Or are you simply gonna shoot a lot of close-range stuff? So all things to keep in mind, get your brain starting to think about what kind of shots you're gonna go for. So once you have some general information about the area, the next step is to set a non-photography related goal. And I believe this is critical in order to get into the flow state. So a non-photography goal could be something like hike the 3 miles to get to the overlook at the end of the trail. Or it could be to hit these 3 waterfalls over the course of the next 3 hours. And once you have that non-photography goal in mind, that's what you're gonna be working towards doing. You're not gonna be working towards getting certain photos. The reason I say don't work towards saying, I wanna get a photo of this structure looking like this, or of this exact thing, is it's gonna lead to disappointment and it's gonna be more difficult to achieve that flow state. So by setting a non-photography related goal, you have a goal that's non-photography related, and in the process, you're gonna shoot photos. What you shoot in that time frame is completely up to you. So it takes the pressure off of getting into that flow state. You just need to accomplish the physical goal that you're setting. Now that you have yourself all amped up and prepared and ready to shoot, the next thing to do is to arrive at the spot. So I like to arrive about an hour and a half before sunset. And by this, I mean arrive where you're gonna be shooting an hour and a half before sunset. So if you have a 1-mile hike, arrive at the end point an hour and a half before sunset. I found this is about the sweet spot to be able to get enough golden light, enough time to prepare, and then enough time for twilight, and it not turn into this mega photography session. You'll see a lot of photographers online say to show up 3-4 hours before the sun starts setting. Personally, I think this is completely ridiculous. Unless you're an old dude and you have absolutely nothing to do with your life except sit in one spot all day, 90 minutes is the sweet spot. It gives you enough time to prepare for about a half hour, about an hour of golden light to work with, and then you can spend a half hour after that shooting in twilight, come out with some good photos, and you have a successful photography shoot on your hand. The next thing I like to do is once you show up early, I usually plug in some music. And you know, this is a debatable topic. Some people like to just listen to the nature sounds. And honestly, for me, it depends on the day, but I'd say most of the time I like listening to music. For me, my music of choice is hip hop or heavy electronic music. For some reason, I'm not a big fan of shooting with chill music in the background. I like something that's gonna get me amped up and get my juices flowing and I'm just ready to rock. So I need something that gets me in the zone. So I plug in music, put away all distractions. This is extremely important. You don't wanna be checking social media. You don't want your phone going off. You don't wanna be checking your map. Have a general idea of where you're going so you're not trying to figure it out while you're on the hike. And this is when you're gonna start to transition into the flow state. So just walking around, listening to music, and begin shooting. So the way I like to start shooting is I usually start with something very small. Usually this could be a flower, a mushroom, a small plant, very small scenes that are really easy to shoot. I'm not aiming for intense compositions. I'm not aiming for focus stacks, which we'll go over later, exposure blends, all of that crazy stuff. We start really easy. So shoot something small, no pressure. Shoot things you're not even gonna publish or you don't even plan on editing, just to get that camera clicking and get the process started. So then I like to slowly begin to work my way up to bigger and bigger compositions. So maybe you start with a flower, then you start with a bush, then you start with a tree, and then you start moving into the mountains, and then you start moving into mountains with an object in front of it, so some kind of focus stack. Then maybe you add the exposure blend into it. And then by this point, you've been completely warmed up. You've started early, you're planned, you've shot small things, you're getting into the big things, and now you're in the zone. And usually at this point, I've achieved flow state. So you can just start shooting, you forget about everything else, nothing's popping off on your phone, and you're just in the zone. It's the best feeling in the world. It's why I do photography in the first place. Getting in this mind state is, I don't even know how to describe it. You'll know what it feels like once you get there. However, not every day you're going to achieve this flow state. So although that sounds like the perfect process to get warmed up, I would say that's the process that I follow that gets me the best results towards warming up and getting into the flow state. There can be some days where you just feel like you can't get into it. And sometimes I'll go out and I'll do all those steps perfectly, and I'll just be like, I can't find something I want to shoot. This environment isn't what I thought it was going to be. It's too dark. Your mind starts turning, and maybe you start falling off the wagon. You're thinking about it too much. How do I get in this state? How do I do it? Why aren't I there yet? And it can get a little bit frustrating. So I've set up a few tips that you can use to help yourself get into that state if you're in a place where you're not able to achieve it. So the number one tip I have, which is a sneaky little tip called neuro-linguistic programming. It stands for NLP in abbreviation. And essentially what you can do is you take any kind of small candy and you keep it in your camera bag. I like to keep a orange little thing of Tic Tacs because they have such a distinct flavor that doesn't resemble many things. And what I do is whenever I'm out shooting and every time I get a good shot, I pop one of these orange little Tic Tacs. And once you start doing this for a couple weeks, couple months, your mind's gonna begin to associate good photography, that feeling of happiness when you got a good shot, with those orange Tic Tacs. So you're essentially linking that feeling to the orange Tic Tac. And then on days where you're not feeling it, you can't get in the zone, you can't achieve flow state, what I like to do is pop one of those orange Tic Tacs, and my mind begins to melt back into that mind state that I've linked with that feeling and that taste. And then you can start to get those juices flowing again. It's a nice little handicap that you can pull out and use every once in a while. Obviously, if you do it all the time, it's not gonna work because you're just gonna start to link bad feelings with that thing if you do it all the time. So it's for those once every couple shoots where you just can't seem to get into it. It's a nice little trick to shortcut your mind into getting into the flow state and start shooting again. Another trick that I like to have under my belt is to change the environment. If you can't seem to find a shot in a certain area, just move to a different spot. Even if it's not where the great view is, move down the canyon area where there's not a great view at all and try shooting in that area. If you can change up your environment, it'll start to change your mind frame a bit, and it can once again shortcut you back into getting into flow state and shooting well. So those are my two big tips if you're not able to get into it. Another thing you could do is change the music. That could help. Just really trying to change that environment in your mind. The one thing I could stress not to do is go to social media. Don't be like, this shoot sucks, this is hard. Don't pick out your phone and start going on social media. That's just gonna make it even worse. So keep trying, keep pushing. The final thing I wanted to cover in this video is what to do if you just don't want to go out and shoot. And this kind of cuts back to when I was talking about artistic discipline in the philosophy video. There's a lot of days where you just don't want to go shoot, especially if you're like me and you're shooting 5 days a week. It can get a little bit tiresome some days, even though I absolutely love photography. Every day isn't going to be the easiest to go shoot. One thing I like to do is watch motivational videos. So I have a few people on YouTube that I follow. Just type in motivational videos. Some people I can recommend, Jocko Willink. David Goggins, Gary Vee, general celebrity motivation videos, just some guy in the Marine Corps yelling at you through YouTube to go out and do something. Those videos in particular with me get me excited to go out and do something. So if I'm lazy in my car, just laying in the back in the bed, just I don't want to go out today, I'm just not feeling it, pull up some of those videos and get your mind going. Finally, the last thing is to just begin to adapt a sort of mindset that no matter what, you're going to be taking photos today. And even if you don't want to go out, guess what? You're going out to taking photos. You don't have a choice. That's a great thing I like to tell myself is if I don't feel like going out, well, you don't have a choice. You're going out anyway. It's not great out, the light's bad, it's pouring rain out. Guess what? You're going out anyway because you don't have a choice. So that's all my tips for warming up. Really just take it slow and work your way up to it and make sure you show up prepared and ready to go. And that will save you so much time and energy and give you a lot of success in adventure photography. Let's go ahead and cut to the next video.